Chapter 1 The Blow. I was there when the blow fell, and father took it like a man. Jake Hibbertson, who was the other big man in our village, the other besides father, rode up in his car shortly before noon. He wasn't driving it. He had always done his own driving, but today he had a chauffeur, Lorne Bakersfield, who ordinarily filled out a weekly work schedule by driving a truck or working around Jake's farm. But today he was chauffeuring the car. Alighting with haste, he opened the door for Jake, who was seated big shot like in the back seat. As he stepped out, Jake took a mighty long time to straighten himself out, looking around with pleased eyes as he did. The Jaguar was purring nicely. I had seen Jake climb from a battered Austin to a brand new Hummer Hawk, and now he owned a Jaguar sedan, sleek and seemingly poised for speed. Unlike Jake, father had gone backwards, climbing down from a car to a horse. Today, Jake was the personification of triumph. Although he was beaming happily, his eyes weren't laughing. It was hard to like a man like him. His face was not only axe-shaped, but he had a sick, washed-out color. He didn't look kind, and he didn't look cruel. He didn't look anything. Lifting his pith helmet with a veined hand, he scratched his head as he surveyed our Robin Hill property. Father was on the veranda. I was in the yard. Father was cool. He was leaning against one of the veranda posts, waiting for it. Jake said, "How ya, Merton?" "Hello, Jake," father said. "Nice day, eh?" "Sunny and hot," father said, stifling. "Come on in." Jake looked around at the car. "Shut her off, Lorne," he said. "Me and Merton have business." He climbed our stairs like a lord with a monopoly on everything in the world, and father led him into the room we called his office, where he kept his farm books and catalogs and accounts and bills, lots of the latter. Lorne did as he was told, then leaned against the car, picking his teeth with a straw. It was the first time that I wasn't interested in a car as talked about as the Jaguar. Instead, I wanted to eavesdrop on the proceedings. So I climbed the stairs weakly into the house and into my room, which once I had shared with Brad. But Brad didn't live there anymore. Neither did Arlene, my sister. They had moved to live with Ma, who had divorced father about a year and a half ago. She was teaching in the local high school and lived in a house of her very own. I believed I saw now why she had divorced father. She must have seen this coming, this humiliation. Father had been sliding from a long way back. He didn't seem to have something in him which Ma appreciated in men, and she had gone with my sister and brother, leaving the house to father and me. It was my choice to stay with father, and I had stayed, but I hadn't thought it would come to this. Yet one time father was a good man, a careful man, a man with judgment. What had weakened him? My room was adjacent to father's office. I could hear the two men talking low. Jake was saying, "So, Merton." "So? Have all of it, Merton?" "Not all of it, Jake." "Not all, Merton?" "But it's due today. All of it. More than due." Father had borrowed money against his property from Jake. £7,000, a lot of money to bring his farm out of stagnation, as he had said. But the farm was still as it was before, maybe worse, and the money all spent, and more than 2 years after. Now, none was in, or not all of it, so father had just said, "I'm sure you can see your way to wait another." "Another what?" snapped Jake. "Another couple of months, Jake?" "Merton," Jake said, and I heard his boots scuff the floor and his chair pushed back. He had got to his feet and probably was looking through the window away from father. "I already allowed you an extension." Yes, And thanks, but I need the time. I know I still owe you a lot. 4,300 to be exact. And Merton, let me ask you, if in 27 months you cannot pay, if in that time you paid back only 3,000 roughly, how in the name of God are you going to find all that money in 2 months only? I can raise it. Meaning you'll borrow again to raise it? A vicious circle, Merton. Father chuckled. I didn't understand how he could have. The way that man Jake was talking to him. But he had done it. He said, No, no, but I need to straighten myself out. I am in a mess right now. Nothing seems to be going right. I know I've made mistakes, but I'll make good yet. And you see, I've some new business coming in any week now. You could tell that Jake wasn't looking at father when he said, I have obligations to meet, Merton. But Jake, what's 4,000 to you? Jake turned sharply. What's 4,000 to me, you ask? To lend people like you, Merton? To shore you up and wait, and now what? You expect me to throw it away just like that? No, no. All I'm saying is you can afford to wait. You have money. I mean, uh, you don't really need it immediately. I do, Merton. I do. Today. Now. The silence was awful. I could hear both of them breathing. One, the tiger, the other, the victim. Then I heard the crackle of paper. It's too bad that you're a gambler, Merton, Jake said. I have your deed here, he went on, and if you pay then I'll be happy to hand it back to you. But, and it pains me even to say it, Merton, but if you can't, I'll have to take your property. Of course, it's worth more than the 4,000 which is outstanding. I'll give you the difference in cash, though there are so many run-down things here not worth anything. Father didn't say anything. He didn't say anything for a long time, for an eternity. At last, he croaked. And that's the final, huh? What else can I do, Merton? I am a businessman with obligations. I owe the bank money too. Okay, Jake, the deed is yours, I heard Father say recklessly. I'm sorry, Merton. Sorry, nothing. Jake was happy for this to happen. You understand, of course, how painful this is for me. You have to do what you have to do, Jake. No hard feelings. None. And you'll sign? As you wish. I have a pen right here, Jake said quickly. He would have. The papers crackled again. Father had lost the farm and the house and everything. Robin Hill. He had mortgaged it away to the hilt, and Jake, wily Jake, had fed him the money as father had had need of it, until now he had him in a bind, and everything was Jake's. Father was careless with his money. Sure, he was careless, and at times foolish too generous. But he had had bad breaks. I remember the almost new truck which was demolished and lost. It was only a year old, standing in our yard, waiting for the insurance to be renewed. Our driver didn't know that father was late in renewing the coverage. He thought it had come through, and without father's knowledge, he had taken the truck out on the road and there was an accident. It was a total loss. Several other things went wrong as well: crop failure, thefts, and now Jake had added another of father's weaknesses. Father was a gambler, something new to me. With the papers signed, Jake became more amicable. Of course, we can work something out by which you may stay here, Merton. Uh-huh. For a while anyway. You may even want to earn something while you're here. He was suggesting that father go to work for him? Thank you very much, Jake, but I'll manage. We'll move out. Don't put yourself into any trouble, Merton. It'll be okay for a while. The rent will be modest. Why? We'll move out, father said tersely. Yes, yes, of course. Jake thought it was time for him to go, but he was too triumphant not to have the last word. Well, think about it, he added. I tiptoed outside again, just in time to see him walk out of the house and around it. His property now. I walked away when I saw him coming my way, but he saw me and beamed. Hello, young man. I couldn't answer him. I wanted to cry, but then again didn't want to, closing my eyes tightly. I tried to shut him out, but he was still there, under my blazing eyelids, there in his pit helmet and khaki work clothes, his axe-shaped face agleam with his black, deadly eyes. Understanding my attitude towards him, he turned away. I heard him tell Lauren, let's go, and I heard the two doors slam shut and the car pull away, and it was then that the tears flowed. I went back into the house. Father was standing in his office. When he heard me, he turned. His face had aged about 5 years since the arrival and departure of Jake. There were lines in it that weren't there before, and a kind of tiredness which interfered with his complexion, making it pale and worn. But his eyes were burning. They were the only things in his face that had life. I couldn't tell what they said or meant because they were neither happy nor sad nor anything. They were just different, alive, almost magnificent in the terrible teeth of defeat. Father, I said, Father. He smiled at me. He put his hand out and I took it and hugged it to my cheek. It was then that he lifted me up so I could be face to face with him. And when I looked, he was crying. Well, not crying because it was a queer mixture of smile and tears. He was smiling so meaningfully that you knew the tears had very little to do with the bad deal. It had to do with us, he and me. He said, Remy, you and me, Remy. I was 15 then. It was Friday and payday, and that meant half a day's work for the laborers, and shortly after noon, the men began to stream up to the house to pick up their wages. They came with the tools of their trade or labor on their shoulders, or swinging in their hands, forks and spades and machetes, and the day was so hot that they carried their shirts in their hands, and their peeled backs glowed shiny black in the dazzling sunlight. Father told each one the same thing. Check with Mr. Hibbertson on Monday morning. He's the new owner. He will expect something new of you. To a man they asked, What? But Father didn't explain. He only looked down at the pay list and barked, Next! Once this job had been done by a bookkeeper, but Father had had to let him go. Things had become that bad. In the evening, Father paid off Lottie, our maid, too. She was about 45 and she cried. She said because she had been with the family for so long a time, too long to part with us, she had nursed us as children all. She said, I was sorry to see her cry so much like a small girl, but abruptly she stopped and loosened her head tie of bright print cloth, and she showed a determination which was hard to comprehend. She left hastily, never looking back. It was one of our worst Fridays. We did not even light the gas lamps. Neither did we eat the supper which Lottie had prepared before her departure. It smelt good of fresh meat being cooked on the several fires, smelt of pork chops and beef soup and frying liver. The village was a chortling place too, and from the window I could see the lights of the stores in the square and hear the people babble and laugh. But nothing was pleasant. The food was like bad medicine, and the laughter mockery. Father moved out of Robin Hill. He had another piece of land, river bottom, and hillside land, which had not been included in the disastrous mortgage deal. 3 miles from Robin Hill, it boasted a cabin on it. Father asked me whether or not I wanted to go with him or join Ma in her home. He briefed me carefully and without bias. He said the comforts of where my mother was surpassed by far those of the cabin. He asked me to consider such things as cooking, clothing care, and particularly the relative remoteness of the bottom land. My being there would mean little in the way of companionship. I would miss not only Arlene and Brad, but the company of the village boys. And there was the question of the distance to and from school, 3 miles one way. I'm going with you, I said. Father climbed atop the furniture-laden cart drawn by our mule Lizette. Behind the cart and attached to it by rope was Marble, our horse. I made up my mind and walked down the steps. Somehow I had to go with Father. He was right, had to be. He had lost and he needed me. I believe that after he and Ma were divorced, he had sunk deeper down, sliding all the time. Should I desert him now? What then? Walking fast towards the cart, I climbed up and threw my bundle in a corner of the cart. Why don't you ride Marble? Father asked. Yes, sir, I said. I liked riding the mare. She was very understanding. She would gallop real fast if that was what you wanted, but then, too, she seemed to know what kind of rider was atop her and would proceed accordingly. If you were but a child, she became your protector. Unhitching her, I mounted up and the cart ground down the hill. The tail end of the sad procession I rode behind. By the time we had reached the road, I was happy. I didn't know why. I shouldn't have been. I should have been sad, but I was happy. The cart creaked along. People stared at us. When they saw Father approaching, they came out onto their porches and to their hedges to witness the final blow to his dignity. I didn't like the way they looked at him or at me. Some even had things to say from under their breaths. They said, worthless man. From a car and a truck to a cart. His wife was always right. Some of them just laughed. It was another matter to go through the square. Somebody must have run up ahead to notify the people that were coming through, because why would so many of them be there on a Monday morning? They were almost drawn up on both sides under the shop's piazzas, as though they were there to review troops. But to me, it was like a celebration of Father's failure. I stopped the horse. I didn't want to go on. I wanted to turn Marble around and dig my heels into her flanks and ride in the other direction. Ride anywhere, not home, but into the wide world somewhere. The cart crunched on, and for the first time I saw that Father's back was straight. He picked up the whip and snaked it in the air, not hitting the mule, only awakening her, and it was like a mini thunderclap, and he, Father, began to whistle. I wanted to be with him. Again, I rode forward, and even Marble seemed to want to be a part of it, galloping galloping ahead of the cart in a prancing way and asking me for her head, and having got it, turning and coming up on the other side of the cart. Nobody seemed to be saying anything, but as soon as we had cleared the square, there was a burst of laughter, and Father stood tall and big and solid on the two shafts of the cart, and it rolled on down to our new place breezily.